Hey guys, I'm in a situation where in order for me to rent a workshop to do my core content, I need money. And no, I'm not gonna beg, but I am in the process of liquidating my old stuff. And you know what? How about we make some content out of it? So let's begin. Before my selling spree, I had a Dell Vostro 260S, which was my very first desktop, and its parts were in that Core P3-esque build. And this Dell Optiplex 7010, my workstation, and I've edited almost all videos on. Then there were a load of spare parts, almost enough to build a system. We just need a bit of capital. Ooh. After selling my Vostro for £45, here's what we'll build. A borderline, low-budget gaming PC that'll run things like Skyrim, Minecraft, and some esports titles pretty well. The parts that we already have are a Core i3 2120, go figure, 8GB of Corsair basic sticks, some cheap cooler, a GTX 750 Ti, and a Dell power supply. What we needed are a cheap motherboard, this Dell MIH61R motherboard will do, go figure, and one of the better looking cheap cases, the EVGA GTX. For a while I thought of putting my parts of the Optiplex 7010 into the new case, but that'll leave me with an empty case as well as this. Remove either the front panel, power switch, or airflow sensor, what the hell is that? You get error codes on startup. Highly annoying and too much trouble just for a case transplant, so that idea was scrapped. The MIH61 chipset can accept both Sandy Bridge and Ivy Bridge processors, so my initial plan is to use an i5-3470. It needs a BIOS update first, so in goes a Pentium G860 and out goes this cooler bracket, before applying thermal paste and installing a clip-on cooler. Let's put in 8GB of Corsair Valueselect RAM. The power supply originally came from another Optiplex I once had, but the CPU 4 pin was really short, so I bought an extension for it for not too much money. In goes the IO shield and motherboard. For the eagle-eyed of you, yes, I had to take it back out. So far, building in this case has been pleasant. It has a power supply shroud with okay room and channels for cable management. However, for a case that costs £21, some compromises have to be made. For example, the lack of a drive bay. You just screw it in at the bottom of the case. It's a good idea to manage your cables as you build your system, especially when plugging things in, so you won't have to unplug them again because a cable doesn't look right or something. And on the subject of cable management, if not for looks or airflow, you should do a bit of it to make swapping components much easier. What I haven't told you yet is that my Optiplex 7010 has the graphics card for this PC, a full-sized one at that. With a PCIe riser cable, angled HDMI adapter and a cardboard backplate, it can work, I just wouldn't recommend it. This EVGA GTX 750 Ti is my very first graphics card and will have a place in my heart as so. Here's another way this case is cheap. It only has one PCI slot bracket, the rest are stamped covers in which you pry off. Lovely. And here is the finished system. Now let's do a BIOS update, put in the i5 and call it a day. Oh, Jesus Christ. This is the part where I've done a bit more digging than I should have before buying this motherboard. It came from an Optiplex 390 and unlike the Vostro, this thing spews out error codes, like we've seen here. For more of a sucker punch, this board, despite having the H61 chipset, does not actually support Ivy Bridge processors. This is due to this board having a 4MB BIOS chip, whereas 3rd gen processors require 8. So yeah, the idea of an i5 is also out of the window. The best Sandy Bridge unit I got is the i3-2120, so that's that. Now I have to contend with them pesky error codes. With no option to turn them off, I did a bit of digging, and you can trick it into thinking that they're installed, just by shorting the sense pins to ground. The power switch pinout is here, but the front panel pinout I couldn't find, so with a little jumper I found out where. And let me tell you, at this point my respect for Dell has ebbed away. Soldering those pins mean no error codes, regardless if those parts are actually installed or not. In fact, I just did this board a favor. Oh, bloody hell. I swear by the end of this I got an aneurysm somewhere. And so I've learned a few things within this ordeal. My transition as a PC enthusiast, let's say, to building custom systems begins with moving away from Dell. Being locked in an ecosystem is something that doesn't sit well with me. And we can agree that Dell or other OEM products are reliable and just work. What I'll say to you is that when they don't, servicing them is harder than it needs to be. If you're planning to case swap an Optiplex or something, just sell it and go DIY. And don't make my mistake and buy an OEM board and think it's all sunshine and calm winds. But anyways, as for this build, you might notice that the case doesn't exactly have a front intake. Thermals luckily weren't a problem with an i3 and 750 Ti. That won't be the case for hotter parts. I ended up selling this within 2 hours of listing for £120. Not bad for unloading a CPU, RAM, cooler, graphics card, and power supply all at once. Hope you've learnt a few things. This is the Budding Engineer. See you soon.